Knock on wood, yeah.
Just get out of here.
Yeah, so grab your beer and get down those stairs. So. We have a public service announcement, which is pretty cool, from Sheila Carruthers. So one of our members here, Sheila is actually one of the instructors on the Canadian Management Consulting. You're a trainer as well, and she's has an office here, and she had a really cool idea, and I said, you should actually explain it.
Because I was trying to get Ron to do this,
but you want it done right.
If you get out your phone and if you go to LinkedIn, some of you probably, you're all techie people, so you should know this. And you have to have your location on, you know, that people can find your phone. If you go to, at the bottom where it says My Network, click on that, and then you see a little blue circle with a person and a plus sign. If you click on that, and then the very bottom of the three options says Find Nearby. Click on that, and you will find everyone who's in this room who's also on the same page, so that you can connect with each other right away.
Which is a cool thing, because we encourage a lot of this about networking, so
you can
yeah.
just click away.
Look at the people getting out of here right away. This is awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Which is a great lead-in to tell you a bit about Resource YYC, because we are entrepreneurial, we're a co-working space for entrepreneurial professionals, but what that means is anywhere from, we encourage anyone who's a professional, become a member, get engaged. If you are a professional association, the membership's at no cost. And then we have the events going on for a lot of, and then if you actually do want to actually really participate here, it's anything from if you need to rent the boardroom to have a meeting with a client, all the way up to an office for a day, or we have people who've been in here for years actually with offices and their businesses here. So there's quite a few members. Who's got an office here right now that connects? So there we go. So anyone in here, if you want to actually connect with someone here, feel free, we can do a tour. Marlene, so Marlene, this place runs excellent because of Marlene. So talk to her. We actually have free day passes, so anyone here, if you want to just come try it out for the day, talk to Marlene. She has free day passes, and we'd be happy to give them out and have you come try it out for a day. What else? Marlene, did I catch everything? I think we covered everything. Yeah. So with that, let's start today. So I know I'm really happy about the topic today because it really resonates with a lot of people. Some of you are in data management already, and some of you are trying to figure it out, but there is a lot of noise, and sometimes it's just a bit overwhelming around data. And for me, using data for a real purpose is what it's all about, right? So, and for a lot of people, it's just how do you make decisions and how do you use data in your day-to-day business. So just do a few introductions here, and I won't do your full bios because I'm going to tell you a bit about yourself. So starting close to me is Roger Milley, and Roger, we've known each other for 3 years because you started your little company Fusium here with us there. And Roger, I'll go through this quickly here. So you left, actually, you have a CEO of data analytics consultancy Fusium, which helps clients enable data-driven decisions. Roger started in 2016 after 27 years with Shell. That'll be a familiar story for a lot of people doing a transition, pivoting, and his experience is primarily oil and gas, although with Fusium, he's worked in other sectors, including, I think, public sector, he's worked with nonprofits, so the transition from oil and gas has taken people into a lot of different areas. So next to Roger is Chris Sorensen, and Chris also has his company has an office in here. It's Iterations Insights. And you're an analytics firm, and your entire career you've been straddled line between business and technology. And strong background in cost accounting and budgeting and forecasting, right? So, and it led to his obsession with data. Obsession. There you go. That's the kind of guy you want on a panel, right? So,
is this live to Facebook?
But
say whatever you want.
We can edit to whatever you want.
Just as he's going to be obsessed with something.
And
you can be live to LinkedIn.
You can be live right now.
Hit my network.
So, and we're happy to have you here because you're actually doing quite a bit of data analytics. and some courses and training as well, so you get to spend a lot of time in your public. Mike Fretwell is president of Mission Geospatial, and he's a professional land surveyor with 30 years of experience, and his career in geomatics has taken him lots of different places, a lot of oil and gas, but also municipalities, and I think part of that was even overseas work as well. So he has an MBA from Queens. He's the past president of the Alberta Land Surveyors Association, and is director of the Professional Surveyors of Canada, and sits on a number of advisory boards. And it's nice to have Mike on the board, because geospatial data is a big part of our world today, but sometimes gets lost because it's just a thing we expect with Google Maps, but it is more than that, right? So thank you guys for coming, and again, thank you all of you for coming today again. So maybe just start out, so that was kind of my bio view, but actually what I wouldn't mind is just maybe just talk about a bit about your companies and kind of what brought you to this place in your company and careers. Roger, you want to start?
Sure. Nice to be here. Ron, thanks for the intro. You're getting better and better at this.
Yeah.
We've been
It's the beer.
Yeah. 3 years of this. When I first met Ron 3 years ago, he said, "I don't know anything about data management," and actually he did, and most people do know something if you're trained as an accountant or an engineer or whatever. I brought some focus to it because I think there's opportunity. So after Shell, I want to do something entrepreneurial, and really what we do is help business people better understand an aspect of their business by analyzing data associated with that business, or sometimes data that's outside of it. So the business environment could be economics, could be the outbreak. Actually, recently we had a client ask us about helping them track that with respect to some supply chain analysis. So the number of problems you can work on are really sort of endless, and that's why it's taken us out of oil and gas into all kinds of fascinating areas. I'll just leave it at that.
Sure. Chris, tell us a bit about your company and kind of what got you here.
Sure. So my company, Iteration Insights, so we've been around since January of 2018, so just over 2 years now. We're sitting at about 12 people. I kind of like Roger here, wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I was doing some subcontracting, thought I want to grow a company. I'm all about working with teams and culture and stuff like that. And I thought, well, given the analytics was, this is the time to make it work. If I can't make it work now, I'm never going to make it work, and I always wanted to make sure I gave myself that shot at it. So we gave it a go, and started with a couple people a few years ago, and we haven't been really looking back. Like Roger's saying, I'm probably going to echo a lot of things you're saying because we agree on a lot of this stuff. There's tons of opportunity in analytics. I've been recently speaking at a couple different groups around CPA, and I think there's still tons and tons of road ahead of us in terms of trying to help people build up their analytic acumen, data literacy, understand what to do with data. Everyone has data. Everyone's been trying to do stuff with data. It's just a matter of how do you assemble all those pieces you have in your organization and bring it together to help tell a story. So yeah, I've been working a lot on that, and we've been working across a lot of different industries, which I think is very important instead of just being stuck in one industry, because well, mainly for this reason is you move past a lot of assumptions. I'd like to tell a little story around this. We were working with a client of ours in oil and gas, and we were sitting back and they were drawing some stuff on the whiteboard, and they said, okay, we've got this process over here, ABC. I forget what it was, to be honest with you. And the one person said, all right, I know what that means. Or they said in their head they know what it means. Another person knew what it meant. I said, what does that mean? I don't understand what that is. I'm not an oil and gas expert. We do work in oil and gas. I said, what does that mean? Have to be that little kid in the room, right? And so person on the left, I defined it, person on the right defined it, and they realized they're both talking about two different things. I kind of just sat back and went, all right, we've got a discussion we need to have here because you guys have been using the same terminology incorrectly for many years. So it is good to come in with a variety of different industry experiences. And in fact, one of the things I always like to say about data is it's the same, it's largely the same across every organization. It's finance, marketing, everyone's kind of doing the same things. Now, of course, the industries are a little different. There is some terminology that's a little different, but bringing that fresh perspective to things is very important. And I think I would even echo in some ways that's even more important in Calgary is just bring those fresh perspectives to all these different industries and say, hey, I've been working in fintech. What about some of the stuff we're doing on gas? Why don't we change the way we're doing things? And I think there's more of an appetite now to change their perspectives. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, Mission Geospatial, we've been around since 2005, operating primarily in the resource sector. A lot of exploration work up north, and pretty much for my whole career, we've worked with data of different types, from analog data, migrating it into a digital format, and merging it all together, primarily from an engineering perspective. One of the things of late that we've really trying to come to terms with is the mass migration towards data analytics, the acquisition of primary data through to turning it into an engineered product that you can rely on. And one of our focuses has been on the quality management aspects of that and making sure that what's being acquired is suitable for the task. Certainly right now, I think as my colleagues have iterated, in data analytics is a huge potential to break down silos and make sure that everybody's had a seat at the table to share the true value of the data that's collected. And I think in the past, certainly in my career, that opportunity to revest the information to make it valuable to other sectors within a given company has been lost. In fact, it's driven up cost and increased risk. So I think there's opportunity to rigorous analytics to make it more available.
So I wanna actually just have you carry on a bit, cause you talked about starting with analog data, right? So how has data, and I think, you know what, everybody has their kind of benchmark of where data analytics are. I mean, some of us are still back a long ways and some of us are right up to date, but how has data changed from the time you started your career to now, especially in the geomatics world? Like, how would you speak of it 20 years ago and how you speak of it now?
Well, I started my career on a seismic crew in north of Noma Wells in the late 70s. And at that time, we'd be out all day surveying, and in the evenings, we'd be punching that information into a computer. You imagine a computer had a hand crank. I think it maybe had 4 bits of power, but horsepower. The point was we were still turning it into a digital format. It was just very, very labor intensive and often 18-hour days to take up one day's piece of information and make it usable by geophysicists. Now, you've got a phone that can scan an incredible amount of data. Location intelligence is pervasive, it's everywhere. You saw a complete demonstration of it earlier. Connect with who's nearby. That's geospatial information, that's location intelligence. So the world has changed completely. You can get massive amounts of information. You can get a laser scanner that's picking up 400,000 shots a second with multiple returns. What do you do with that? It's a massive amount of information. It's not always valuable, but there it is.
Yeah, how about you guys? So in your career, how has data changed?
I think
You're not as old as not as old as this, no.
From the age of grunge rock in the 90s. How has it changed?
I think the biggest thing for me is awareness. I think awareness is really one of the biggest things that has changed, because now, oh boy, I want to say maybe in the 2010 range, analytics was something that was kind of the domain of purely IT and the business people. But now it's in the consumer's hands. So we now all expect analytics in our daily lives. We've got Google Maps. We've got, what's the most optimal way to get home. Like, we're all walking around with analytical devices in our hands to figure out how to optimize our lives. Google calendars and stuff like that. How we can manage getting the kids around and stuff like that. So I think a lot of it is awareness. Let's throw the Moneyball example on the table. That was kind of, in my mind, one of the first big starts of it when that book came out, and then sports betting really started taking off. And so it's in the consumer's hands, which has changed things. And I was actually, the conference I was at last week, somebody said something really interesting that I'm going to keep saying over and over again for a little while. Is there was a number of years ago where at work we were living like the Jetsons, and at home we were living like the Flintstones. It's flipped now. A lot of organizations are now living like the Flintstones, and we are living like the Jetsons at home. and businesses aren't really keeping up with that. And I thought that was a really interesting, and when we talk about Flintstones and Jetsons, everyone knows what that is, right? Now we're
Just
dating ourselves.
Google it.
We're dating ourselves. Yeah, just quickly Google it, yeah. But I thought that was really interesting. So to me, the biggest thing is awareness, and then we can talk a little bit about tooling and stuff like that. Cloud's changed an awful lot, but maybe I'll turn over to Roger.
Anything changed since Shell days?
Well, yes. It used to be, technology was always a barrier for a long time, okay? So we would worry about how much memory something would take and whether you could store it. And, there was the big transition from a character-based screen to WYSIWYG. It would actually be a little graphical, and that kind of thing. So a lot of that's gone away now. So we don't care so much about storage. It's ubiquitous and pretty cheap, and we have all kinds of tools to manipulate data. So there's lots of opportunity because of that. But then again, we also give up something, and we often don't really know. So even though, Sheila, thank you very much for introducing us to that, we also just lost a little bit of privacy in doing it. If you participated in that experiment, and I decided to participate in it
Sheila's
anyway.
trying to capture everybody's information.
Yeah, she's trying to get me to become a certified management consultant.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, sure.
So it's a lot more worrying
Yeah.
now. So we have to be very thoughtful about how we manage it. In the past, everything was so fragmented that in a way it was a little more secure, because you couldn't do much with it anyway. Like, the computers were really connected. We're all carrying the equivalent of supercomputers now, and that can be used for good or for bad.
So for so many years, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
And the whole thing is nothing, we're not getting any data out because the garbage in's bad. So we must have solved the garbage in problem by now, right?
We have absolutely not. We have absolutely not
We
solved
got
the
all this
garbage in problem.
technology, why haven't we solved the garbage in problem?
Well, I think right now, in some ways, we're accelerating the garbage in, garbage out process.
Why is that?
Great.
A lot of people are still entering a lot of information in the systems without good processes and creating a lot of bad data, and that's never going to go away. And that won't go away as long as people are interacting with computers. So that's just something that's kind of been there. And then all the extra data we have coming in from all these additional sources, Facebook, LinkedIn, we're giving some stuff up to LinkedIn, trying to get it all correlated. There's all kinds of data that's out there, and it's varying degrees of quality and goodness and worthiness for various purposes and stuff like that. So I think it's just there's been
Except for Google Maps, right? Mike?
Yeah.
That was Google Maps, pretty accurate, right?
Yeah, sure, go for it. You can follow it off the edge of the cliff if you want. It's all good. With regards to the quality of data, it's important to recognize that not everyone needs the most accurate data or the most precise information. But often, if you're making an engineering decision, you want to make sure it's fit for purpose. And what we're seeing right now is a collection of information without control. It's almost insanity out there. Even the largest purveyors are amalgamating a problem out into society, which will come home to roost at some point in time. Speaking strictly from a surveying and positioning perspective, it's almost anarchy in some respects. And that's what we try to solve, is to make sure that, when our clients, for example, say they want to do something, that they wrap it in some realistic parameters, that it's something that can actually be physically achieved on this planet, in this universe.
So before, anyway, make good decisions with the data out. So what is your process for helping a client go through and get better data in? Sorry.
Better garbage in.
Better garbage in.
How much time do you
Yeah.
have? It's a matter of, I think, really understanding what the client's purpose is and discovering that. Often they don't. Like, we're sometimes, I can give you an example. A large midstream company who will remain nameless asked us to come in, and they wanted a drone-based LiDAR survey in the middle of winter. And my first question is, why? What do you need it for? And they said, well, we want to monitor some defamation. I said, well, you do realize that there's like 1.5 feet of snow on the ground, and that kind of negates the purpose of LiDAR. And they said, well, yeah, but we definitely want drone-based LiDAR. So I presented a solution that was like a tenth the cost and provided a better solution, but it wasn't what we wanted. They wanted a drone-based LiDAR survey, and for some purpose that I couldn't discover. Anyway, that's,
So
it's just one example.
Roger, garbage in?
Yeah, so, there are times when you want it to be really accurate, right? You go into the hospital and something is monitoring your vitals. You want it to be very accurate. Sometimes we don't need it to be though, and some general trends might be adequate. So, we did some, market research for a company that had an app, an industrial app on the phone. They had never really analyzed it, wanted a better understanding of who was signing up, using this, where are they? And if it was reasonably accurate, that was way better than what they had before. And so for that purpose, it was okay. At some point, they probably want it to be refined. We pointed out a number of data anomalies that would distort their perception. But they were okay with it, to the point where, and this is, I don't know if you've come across this, if you, in data analytics, if you do your job quite well too soon, sometimes they kill the contract. Because you've just taken them from, say, not knowing anything or not knowing as much to they're blown away very shortly thereafter and say that's good enough for now. Even though originally what was portrayed is scope that maybe took it out here and this, you know, it's gonna have these sorts of bells and whistles and that kind of thing. So we've actually had some tearful goodbyes. They're crying on our part, you know, very early on in the cycle. It's like, well, this is not done, you know, but it's done, it's good enough. And I think we have to kind of understand when those situations present.
So how do you, so then the data outside is how do people know, so they get caught in this trap as I really need good data, and then now they just have data. So what, so that sometimes that's now a problem, right? I've been in situations where the data is no longer helpful, it's just a lot of data, right? So
It was
so-
never captured with some of the attributes you need, like time. And
Yeah.
time is quite useful,
Yeah.
especially on machines. You don't know what time it was or what machine or
Hmm.
something like that. It's probably not that useful actually going forward. So you kind of have to decide.
So is that
with
sort of at the beginning of the process, figure out what they need out? Or do you get all the data and then figure out how to manage the data?
We tend to get exposed to stuff that's been captured already.
Yeah.
You're trying to make sense.
You guys?
Well, it's kind of about the same thing as trying to make sure that people have like a reasonable case for what they want to be capturing. Because I think right now there seems to be a bit of a propensity to capture it just in case, and we end up with these kind of like data-like garages, like our garages at home. Just hock everything in just in case it comes out. Get out of the house, put it in the garage, everything falls over the garage, right? We're not really managing it. So even though we may be getting data from systems that is delivering quality information, it's not being managed after the fact, and then it starts to get damaged and lost, and you can't stitch it back together. So just the fact that it wasn't being managed all of a sudden causes a data quality problem.
Yeah, I think getting back to something that Roger said about the time component, it's really important when you're layering data together to make sure they're relevant one to another. You see that, seen that recently on an application one of our clients put forward to the regulators, where people speaking against it had used data that was from a totally different time. So they didn't correlate, like they're looking at the human footprint on the landscape and how it was affecting migratory animals, but they're from completely different eras. But yet it was all layered together and presented as this is the impact. So there's a huge potential to distort the message to a given agenda, which is problematic.
Do you mean people lie with the data?
No.
Is that what you're saying? People
No,
lie
wait.
with it?
Did we get the title wrong of this
You
whole
don't,
thing?
you don't even need data today, right? You just need a Twitter account.
And one further thing is to make sure that the data loses its metadata or the important information about that data as it goes through the pipeline. And we see that all the time where data is merged together, yet you don't know the provenance, you don't know where it came from and how it was resolved, so it's tend to be lumped together, and it's basically garbage once you get to that point, from my perspective.
And are there big, cause now data sources are all over the place, right?
Mhm.
So how do you tell a good data source from a bad data source? Cause you can go out anywhere and get data, right?
Sometimes
you get data
it's-
on the city of Calgary.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, and insurance rates.
Kind of. So the nature of the organization, you know, you can kind of validate. So if it's City of Calgary, you're referring to some traffic analysis that I did.
You don't figure out why my neighborhood is the highest insurance
We
rates.
accidentally figured out why
Yeah.
he's paying so much in insurance. by analyzing accidents, and the accident data is largely from the city. So where else are you gonna get Calgary accident data from, you know? So you gotta take it, it wasn't perfect, but you take it and you can make certain things and combine it with temperature and the flow of traffic and intersection points and various things, and actually draw some rather interesting conclusions from it. This was all done on spec just to have some fun. Turned out that the most problematic neighborhood in all of Calgary was sleepy little Bridgeland,
Where we all walk.
where you
Yeah,
walk.
yeah.
And Ron's car insurance had gone up in part because it's so dangerous with all the accidents.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at it quite precisely, what they were doing is lumping all of the Memorial and Deerfoot accidents, which would be notable, into that little zone. So sleepy little Italian eating gelato
Yeah, I
kind of
know.
community gets all that stuff.
I've never thought the same of the people that drive in from Airdrie and crash in our neighborhood anymore.
So you can find out some very interesting
Yeah.
things anyway. So doing that.
So, okay, now where were you? I'm just off on
No,
my
I-
insurance rates again.
This is where the script falls by. I've been through this so many times, right? This is where the script goes to the
Yeah.
ground and now it's
Free for all.
So actually I do want to, so I'm a company, I want to be competitive because everybody else, they're doing really great things with data, right? For sure, right? I'm not competitive because I'm not managing my data and I don't even know where to start, except I better get lots of data and do something with it. So that's how they come to you, right? Sometimes?
Not anymore,
No.
because one thing we learned is don't spend a lot of time trying to convince people.
Yeah.
Go to the people who already know that they say they've started using the tools we use and they're having some difficulty and they want us. And we spend a lot less time.
So what does that mean then? Like,
Well, so when I did the traffic, so I offered free seminars, just, you know, I'll talk about this. We had a president of an organization show up, sat through 2 hours of traffic accident analysis. Global manufacturer came up to me afterwards, he gave me his card, he said, I think you might be able to help us. So that turned into a few little consulting engagements. Why? Because they're already there and they're having problems. So that's our niche, is you already know you need some help with this. But to go around and try and sell to companies that really have no concept of it, you might do better with the kind of model like Chris is an educator, and people he works with are good educators, and they're threaded into educational institution, profession, and stuff like that. I think that model probably can pull out and educate a little bit better than the way we are currently set up. So it really just depends how you engage with the marketplace.
so how do you educate?
How do we educate?
Yeah, well, like.
Well, so
speak on it.
we were involved with state, and I see a number of students who are going to be in the state class that we'll be doing here next month or so. I'm losing the concept of time here. So we were engaged at the state. We also do a lot of public training and stuff like that, because I'm a bit of a coach / trainer at heart. And like Roger's saying here, it's now, I think we're at a point now where that awareness is out there, where we don't have to be out there pounding the pavement like we did in the past and saying, hey, let's talk about data analytics and do you have these pains, and spending a lot of time, because I only have 8 hours in a day, I can't do a lot of that. We find that more people are coming to us that say, hey, we think we've got this thing, we've seen some solutions, and I see my buddy over there has this, I kind of want something similar, right? So they have an idea that they have some data pains and some needs, and then we can go and help them. And the nice thing is when we engage with them, we're already very close to getting a deal done, right? So that's one thing we're trying to do some stuff on in analytics as well, is how do we shorten our sales cycle up? How do we de-risk our statement of work and get down to business with people that want to get moving fairly quickly? We've had some deals where we go sit down with people and we met them for the first time before leaving the room. They're like, haven't we started work yet? I'm like, we're just having our first meeting. We just met like an hour ago. So, and I think that's part of the awareness thing. There's a lot of people that are excited. They want to learn how to do more, and they're genuinely interested to see where they can.
What are
start
the key
taking things.
concepts when you're educating people? What are the key concepts around data analytics and decision making that people need to be aware of?
Well, the big thing we focus in on is a couple of things. Those are 2 things. There's front end and back end stuff. So number 1 is making sure you've got a business problem, you have some organizational KPIs. Where do you want to be going your business? How are you measuring your business? And then what data do you have to start supporting, monitoring and managing your business with some KPIs? So they should have something that's important to them, that they walk in their office, they sit down first thing in the morning and say, I need to make sure that I'm doing good on sales, you know, my something's going right, like just they have whatever metrics you happen to have, they can sit down and say, am I doing well or am I not doing well, do I need to do something or not? And have a sense of what those organizational KPIs are, and then start to figure out how to get the data to support those. The one thing I like about analytics, I like to call it the gift that keeps on giving, because once they start seeing what's possible, then it's, well, could we do this? I didn't realize we could do that. And going back to your example of the supply chain person looking at a traffic one, it's like, wait a minute, I started thinking about something, right? So you get a lot of people thinking about the art of the possible. And so we do a lot of that through just training and educating and running user groups and just getting people talking about stuff, running communities around this stuff, really, and not being afraid to share ideas, because it's a good thing. It's a good thing for everybody.
And how do you communicate with your customers about the whole data? You know, so you probably, and I think we've had this discussion before, a lot of the education in your world, a lot around quality of data as well, right? So you
Yeah,
really
well,
have to educate.
it's paramount to the service we provide, that the quality is appropriate, not over the top, right? So, there's a lot of education around that, but particularly with the advent of, essentially, when we're talking geospatial information, space-based positioning systems. The fact that we live on a constantly evolving, moving ball of goo, right? And what's true today will not be true tomorrow, and you need to bolt that into your processes. So that's a part of the education process. Another part of it is making sure that they understand that the information they have may or may not be of a sufficient quality for what their purposes are. An interesting note though is that there's a lot of tools like Google Earth, Google Maps, OpenStreetMaps, fantastic tools in the right context. They aggregate information, they bring it together and put it into a context that everyone can use, which is incredibly valuable, but it's just not the right tool to use for everyone.
Do you get into conversation cost benefit of data?
No, it's all about cost.
Oh, about cost.
Yeah, what we try to do is talk about the three pillars of benefit and how we can de-risk and optimize solutions for our clients and enable the adoption of new technologies. There's some we live in a very interesting time, and I'm still getting my head wrapped around some of the potential. Give you a little bit of an anecdote. I was at a presentation recently, and the head of RBC's, Royal Bank of Canada's location intelligence was there, and they're doing some really interesting stuff that doesn't use GPS at all. They just know that you bought something here with your credit card. This is your net worth, this is your spend profile, and you bought something here. And then they look at the route you might have taken, most probably would have taken, and then they factor that into their real estate investment decisions. And I never even thought of that as being a sort of analytics that you would do on that kind of information, or that you could mine that kind of information and then move it forward. So it's got me thinking about other opportunities that we've never considered.
You guys get into cost benefit discussions with your clients?
Not actually, oddly enough, not a lot recently, but I've in this given I was speaking at CPA conference last couple weeks, they're very much about ROI and tangible benefits and things like that. So talk a lot about that. I found that most of the benefits that I've at least experienced in my career in analytics are largely intangible benefits, and that makes a lot of finance people really uncomfortable. Right? They don't want to measure that stuff; it's hard to measure. They just want the how many man hours did I save last month, and this, and that at the end of the day ends up being a really tiny ROI, right? If you stack it against other projects,
You have to sell the value first.
Exactly, and a lot of it is just, hey, I can get my data quicker, I feel more confident in my decision, and sometimes it's just the data quality of it is better because we reconcile some things like that, and I'm looking at something I can trust, right? And that's not really a tangible benefit. How do you measure that, right? We worked with an equipment manufacturer that they didn't understand what they're saying. This still happens this day and age, so don't think, I'm not talking about an old story here, is they didn't know their previous month's sales until the middle of the following month. So what are we in? We're in February now. So we're in February now. They would not know their sales at any point in time for February until the middle of March. How on earth do you run a business like that? Even if it's going back to the quality thing, say, as long as it's good enough to say, hey, we're struggling, or hey, we're fine, that's enough. So there's still tons and tons of people out there like that. And I've been saying to, especially a lot of the accounting body is that we need to focus more on our little data versus the big data. There's this big, shiny thing out there in the sky going, oh, we should be running towards AI and machine learning and all this stuff. So many people don't have their data foundation set at all that doesn't support the things they need to be getting to. But we're all watching LinkedIn, using LinkedIn, I guess, as our examples. Maybe staring at the wrong things too much and not focusing on that core part of your data first and getting things pulled together.
So I'm curious, because I've been in a lot of other places and other discussions where it's AI is gonna solve everything, right? And in fact, there's tons of money and resources being put towards AI. Is that good, bad?
It's not necessarily bad, but some companies are gonna spend a lot of money up front that they're not gonna get a return. So if you're on bleeding edge, always comes at a cost. Some will really take advantage of it in a wonderful way. And for a lot of companies, though, I think to Chris's point, if you can just get the fundamentals sorted out, what's the basis of our data, and can we report on that and actually describe the business, and actually get some interesting insight out of that, that's a huge achievement. If you can then extend that to some of the more advanced capabilities, do that gradually, machine learning and whatnot, so it starts to act on your behalf, that's probably the way most organizations would go. But if the foundation's not there, leaping to the top like that with some high spend deal, I was at Shell for a long time. And the last job I had at Shell was a global advisor on how to get more value out of information and data. The real high spend, moonshot kinds of things, only 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 is gonna work anyway. So you better have a lot of money. We're more about, I came out of there thinking, focus on the fundamentals. Bring people and companies up from the fundamentals and try not to use hype words. So we don't use big data, we talk about data. We talk about information. And we don't like to use AI or these kind of cognitive is another kind of aspect of it. We stay away from it all, and it's the same terminology I used 30 years ago when I started my career.
Yeah, the big thing is, one lesson to get out of this is technology itself is not going to solve your problems. I would guess, if I had to make a bet, the people who are telling you that were probably software vendors trying to sell you a piece of software to solve your problems.
Well,
If I
I've
had
heard a
to
lot,
guess.
yeah, well, actually I hear it, a lot in the finance world, right? Because they're not gonna they wanna finance new technology, AI, machine learning.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just doing data analytics, so.
But that industry actually has done some pretty incredible things with, automated trading. Is it BlackRock is the largest, they have a portfolio that's in the trillions now. They're the largest financial asset managers in the world. And they use a lot of artificial intelligence. They got a lot of PhDs on staff, cranking out code and doing stuff that's way beyond. And they don't have as many traditional traders as a result. So there are some areas where
Your
there is
average
making a
nonprofit
difference.
probably doesn't need them.
Oh, they need it, but they can't afford it.
Yeah, I would say not to keep stealing this here, but there is a time and a place for AI now, and there certainly is a time and a place in certain users, like Roger was saying, there's a lot of big companies that have a lot of money and they have R&D departments that'll just go and play and experiment, try, and hopefully they hit the big win. Most people don't have that right. They have to focus on using their dollars properly, and going after that stuff isn't necessarily the right thing to be going after. Once again, building a solid data foundation, because the terms we were using the last couple of weeks were AI and ML are very hungry algorithms, but they need to be fed good quality data, because if you don't feed them good quality data, they're going to learn the wrong things, and that's going to be a bad thing.
Well, the other thing with artificial intelligence, machine learning is not only feeding it data, but having the right decisions to seed it. Like I think there's been a lot of noise recently about bias in the decision-making process that's factored into machine learning right at the start. I think there was, I can't remember what it was in the US, something to do with hiring and automatically vetting of candidates. It was Amazon, yeah, where the person who put together the model that was used to define the ideal candidate had certain biases in the way they evaluated candidates. That got vaulted into the process. Therefore, they weren't getting the best candidates, they were getting candidates that were best suited to that particular person's bias. And that's something to be careful of, I think. But hey, why not? No data at it.
But Mike, just to add to that, that particular model predominantly suggested men. And so they tried reworking it.
What's going on here?
A manel, right? So we don't need, how many more manels do we need in the world? Man on panels, we don't need so many. And so they tried to redo
You're down,
that one.
Kendra's up.
Yeah, they tried to redo it and they couldn't, so they had to start from scratch.
But there's a good lesson learned. Right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that was, think about things in the context of iterations. They tried something, they looked at it and went, that's a failure. They could afford to throw it away. They're Amazon, it was a big PR.
That was a rounding error.
Yeah, but yeah, they throw it away, well, often try something else, right? And say, hey, we're gonna learn from that, hey, we better not introduce bias into our next model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it makes for a great talking point.
And
Yeah.
in hindsight, it's so obvious, right? In hindsight.
Yeah.
So without naming companies you work with, other than it was passed 4 years ago, it was probably Shell.
Yeah,
But
that's
have you,
public
do you have
record.
any examples where you've watched people use data poorly to make wrong decisions?
Yes.
But
who would like to open up?
It was more, so learn through experience, right? Because I think.
Try to think of something good though,
Yeah,
Ron. I mean, that's sort of
know.
we need some good examples.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that one, even though you gave a pre-scripted answer to that one. I've been working with so many companies that are starting to do things right that I haven't really seen a lot of
Okay.
to be dead honest with you.
So, okay, well, then I'll
Amazon.
flip it around. Have you seen, oh, there, we got some audience participation.
Okay, all right. That's,
Hi, Ron.
How you doing?
Roger.
Did you have an example?
Well, actually, I've stayed within oil and gas, right? So I may be unfashionable here, I don't know. A lot of the discussion about the shale unconventional
Yeah.
resources is this concern that parent and child wells are interfering with each other and causing declines that are greater than had been expected and leading to lost economics, right? And I don't know if it's coincidental, but that sector of the industry seems to have been the sector that's been wittering on about big data and analytics. Is there perhaps a relationship that data has been used to make decisions about wells and design that has actually yielded wrong analyses? I don't know. I really don't know.
That was a question to the panel.
Yeah.
I
I don't know the answer to that.
The answer is yes, maybe, and no.
It does depend.
One thing I've learned in my career is if I don't know the answer, I just say I don't know.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I was thinking though that, like I've been listening to a couple of people in other venues recently, and they've been mentioning physics. It's almost like we're rediscovering physics in regard to performance, and that we've been through 100 years of establishing certain relationships between, say, porosity and flow. It's called permeability, but that's physics. So have we forgotten that in some of the data analytics we do? Is there any sort of thoughts on that?
No.
You know what you can say no.
I think, no, but part built into that question is a bit, do we get so caught up in the data that we forget some of the first principles, and like we get caught up in the algorithms and forget the real science that leads to
I
good
think
decisions?
sometimes you get the tail wagging the dog at the board level.
Yeah.
For more wells is better, and you end up making some decisions that maybe you wouldn't make if you understood the information a little better. And I
And
think
being
it gets
sharp on
more.
the questions that are being asked, I mean, that shapes everything. And often analysis goes forward, especially in larger companies when you get teams doing this and that, and they assume their reason is because it existed before, so we're going to do it again this year, versus someone being thoughtful and insightful and with power in large companies to say, wait a sec, there's a better way to do this. Let's refine our questions so we actually do the analysis appropriately.
And if you started using data and information in your decision-making process a little more, you might cut off other components of the decision-making process that you've used to that point, so that you don't get them fighting with each other.
Yeah, I
It's a
think
commitment.
not to go down too deep on oil and gas, but just because there's probably a mixed audience, but there are many specialties in oil and gas, and the more specialized you are, the less likely you are to collaborate. because you go deeper and deeper and you come up with your own jargon and view of the world. So you can have engineers, that's a very broad topic. You can have 12 different kinds of engineers, each working on components of something, and just look at it very differently. So if you can't with then you have the geoscience people, you got procurement, you got all that trying to work together. So a lot of silos are built in inherently in the industry. And trying to overcome that is probably one of the bigger battles. But anyway.
Well, we kind of moved on to Q&A anyways, so why don't we, is anyone else either have a comment or question that you'd like to ask the panel, or weigh in with some expertise? Wayne, did I see?
Just a comment really around the value, cost benefit analysis, if you will. Been lucky enough to work in data a very long time, and a recent example of where there's value in data quality is a recent experience at a fairly substantial bank here in Alberta, where we didn't know the connection between loans and the collateral that we were holding against the loans. So if you don't know that, well, we didn't know where $1.8 billion was in terms of collateral being kept against the loans. That meant we couldn't lend $1.8 billion out. Fix the data quality issue, there's $150 million in pre-earned revenue every single year. So data quality can be a huge, there's so much value in fixing those little problems. It wasn't a big problem, but it was a big number. So.
But you knew, it sounds like you knew what you were going for.
Yeah, and
in that case,
it was
right?
kind of funny. It was an audit issue that was sitting around for 10 years.
Oh.
But nobody was willing to take it on.
It's a long time. Audit is your friend if you know how to use an audit. You get a finding, and then you use that to justify your funding.
It probably speaks a bit to silos, right? Because the audit would have been on more of the financial side.
Yeah,
and the problem was on the data side, right?
Well, the data cropped up through a transition from one ERP to another, and links were broken, and but silos, yes, definitely. The corporate side has a different way of tracking collateral. The retail side has a different way of dealing with collateral, and that brings in some issues around complexity as well. So just complexity, things breaking that weren't fixed when they should have been fixed, cost the organization hundreds of millions of dollars.
The biggest challenge on data quality is who should fix it, whose responsibility is it.
Nobody puts their hands up.
And nobody puts their hands up, so it's
Except for the
not
data
an elegant
governance guys.
but it needs to be done. I want your business credit. You talk about data quality a lot. I like it.
You know, it's particular. I think there's a gold mine of information available in data that's been collected particularly over the last few decades that really doesn't have that quality component in it. Colin and I are practitioners where we sign off on the data that we collect. We take personal responsibility for it. So we have bolted in mechanisms to make sure it's suitable. Not only when we collect it, but when we publish it. That's not the normal state of affairs with data. So, you know, when you look at that and you say, okay, well, if we can examine this data that's been collected before, maybe we can identify trends, maybe we can identify systematic problems that we can then fix, we can model out. And there, you can apply machine learning.
Good point.
I think you mentioned lineage being an issue. Like you start with the raw data, it gets combined, and down the road you lose track of what took place. Well, you also mentioned the temporal nature of data. If you don't know when it was recorded, then you're going to have problems down the road. Well, you can, if you're not tracking the business rules for that period of time, you can also run into issues. So the way we collected data 40 years ago is not the same way we collected today.
Precisely. The standards that were deployed a decade ago, or 20 years ago, or 100 years ago are not the same as we deployed. Or they weren't even capable of doing what we're capable of.
So that metadata you talked about is critical. It's a critical importance as well.
And you're actually in one field where you talk about data collected 200 years ago.
Surveying.
Turn to the beginning of the country, right?
Yeah, basically back to the founding of the country. We have to rely upon the information and the registered land tenure documents that were generated 150 years ago to say who owns what today. You know, we could get into First Nations stuff, but we won't talk about that.
Anyone else have questions or comments or input there? Go ahead.
How about for small or medium-sized businesses? Is this accessible to them?
Good question.
Is it accessible?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Like
go ahead.
price-wise and.
Well, yes, there are some nice, easy entry points. Kendra and I, we use Microsoft Power BI as a tool. So I'll talk about the tool just for a second. And I believe that's a cornerstone of your as well, Chris. So if you use Microsoft products, it ends up as a tool and a platform, kind of comes into your world just like Excel did. It becomes part of the suite. And you can do some things fairly quickly, but to get deeper down into it and solve more problems, there actually is another skill level that people have to go through. So there's no reason why small and mid-sized companies can't tackle some of that, but they have to be prepared for the professional development of at least some people in the company, or have a company complement. And so you don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on software. You can actually do it fairly cheaply to get started. But I think the skill development stuff that Chris's company focuses on, it's essential to enabling.
I'm so
People,
crushed.
people
I thought
ask
you could
me.
just buy Power BI and it solved all your.
Well, we want companies to assume that, you see, buy it, assume it's gonna be easy, run into problems, and then we say, hey, maybe we can help.
Yeah, and so the biggest challenge with a lot of, whatever definition you want to put on small, medium, large size businesses, we could debate that for a long time. The biggest thing is a bit of a chasm between small to medium, let's just call it that. And we go into a lot of organizations that we say, okay, let's talk to your IT group. Well, we don't have an IT group, we just have an outsourced help desk. All right, well, who's doing the analytics? Well, these two people over here that kind of know Excel. They don't really have any analytic acumen. They want to start moving on it. So we have to then, like Roger kind of alluded to it, is help get those yardsticks moving forward and get that analytic acumen built into that organization. And sometimes it's a matter of training them. And even if you do want to train them, sometimes I see this all the time when we're on training classes. We do project delivery, not just training. Is they have ambitions, they want to do it, but they don't have time in the day to actually spend to build up that analytic acumen that Roger's talking about. Some of the basic hygienes of collecting, managing, just basic stuff, right? It doesn't have to be that hard. They want to do it, they don't have the time to do it. And sometimes we have a lot of people in our classes that want to do it, they don't have the acumen to do it, and I look at some people and say, you're never going to get this. I don't say it to them directly, but that happens, right? Some
You're
people
not
just
ageist, you're not
don't have it.
ageist, are you?
Yeah. No, that has nothing to do with it. But yes, it's for everybody, you can get there, but it's a matter of putting a plan in place to get there, and you gotta start moving the yardsticks towards some point. You just can't throw your hands up and say, oh, forget it, we'll just go back to what we're doing. It's how do you build that plan so you eventually get to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 people and start building that acumen in so you can take things over on your own.
I think, with Power BI, for example, is a very powerful tool. Like it's basically revolutionized the ability to do some analytics and to see visually what's going on and bring disparate pieces of information together. Word of caution though, it's too easy to draw a conclusion where there's no causality. And you have to be careful to make sure that the story it's telling you is relevant to what you think it's telling you. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's really easy. In basic in analytics is make sure that, when you change this, it actually is having the impact here that you think it is.
So actually, one of the questions I was going to ask about technology. We talked a bit about Power BI, but what are some of the other technologies out there that are being used for data analytics right now that, probably in the same context, you'll just go buy it and expect it to work, but what are some other technologies that people are applying right now?
Tableau is comparable. Alberta Health has a very large installation of that. So if you have any interest in medical informatics in Alberta, Tableau is probably the way to go. Although with all the changes, I can't speak to the opportunity, but they really embedded that. Spotfire, if you've been around for a while, engineers got into that in the industry. Spotfire was always a little harder to use and didn't really evolve the same way. It was Tableau that reshaped the self-service analytics industry, just phenomenally so. And Microsoft had to catch up and has exceeded now by Gartner Group is an IT research, so they've got Microsoft in front. That's in part because Microsoft owns the desktop and owns so much, and they can make it very similar to Excel, so there's some nice transition points. Tableau's been purchased recently by Salesforce. So if you're very much on the retail Salesforce end, you might be more likely to actually get into Tableau. So sometimes it's the association of what you do and the software that might guide you to where you want to be with it.
Yeah, and I would agree on all the front-end tools for your business users. Those are kind of the big hitters. And then when you're getting into some of the bigger data stuff and stuff, then there's all kinds of different cloud technologies, and they're evolving like mad right now. A lot of stuff around Amazon Web Services, Azure, Google Stack, and stuff like that. So those are kind of the big hitters in data. And really, what's really changed in my mind from a technology perspective is cloud, just the compute power that's out there. But now warehouses can be built with, I've been calling it recently a fast lane and a slow lane. We've always operated in the slow lane in analytics, but now there's this fast lane of telemetry data coming in really quick, and the way that's all designed is very different than the way we used to traditionally design things. But that's more on the back end side, getting very technical. I would kind of look at that as I'm assuming most people here are a little bit more business facing front end and probably tipping more towards the tools that Roger's doing. But under the covers, there's some stuff that can support it that is very robust.
Yeah, so real-time or near real-time analytics is huge, has huge potential to lend benefit to clients who are executing on projects. We deployed our own web map into resource exploration projects where the ask was, I want a 15-minute update. Where am I every morning? So I can talk to the VP of exploration and I can say, this is our span, this is where everyone is, this is what's going on. We had 1 month to put it together. We built a custom web map, hired somebody to help us. It wasn't that difficult to do, right? You know, it really wasn't, because it was very focused on a narrow deliverable. But there are other tools, certainly in the geospatial domain, that are just coming to the fore. Things like Solve 3D, which is come out of Calgary here for using massive amounts of scan data and photogrammetric or terrestrial and aerial photography in asset tags and documents. It's a phenomenal product. It's not cheap, but it's there. Another one is, I think, out of the US called Cesium, which does a very similar thing, and it does have a free app, so it's not interesting to throw those things around if you're operating in the kind of space we are.
One of the things that I've really liked about a lot of these end user self-service tools that is coming out is it's kind of surfacing a lot of information to a lot more people's eyes across the organization, not just keeping things down in silos, so it's kind of raised it up a level in the organization in some ways. That's made a lot of people, a lot of organizations very uncomfortable, but it's forcing collaboration and communication to start happening between departments. We're in a bit of a rocky I don't want to say rocky last couple years, it kind of makes it sound bad, but it's people getting used to the uncomfortable nature of collaboration, and now it's starting to pick up some steam, and a lot of that is just taking stuff out of those spreadsheets that have been hiding down in network folders and actually starting to expose it and say, well, why is that? What's going on with that? And starting discussions. And we actually even had one client that knew they had data quality problems, and the sponsor said, I don't care, put it up there. And when people ask why it can't be automated, then we point back to data quality problems and say, if you want this to be automated and to do the things you want to do, we'll start fixing that stuff. So they used it as a way to start funding data quality, which was a very interesting take on it. Years ago, we wouldn't have done that because it would have been shot down, but this was like, no, get it out there. And so it was nice to see that collaboration getting forced on people.
Well, I think we want to make sure there's time for networking, chance for some of you to talk to some of the panel and each other here. So maybe I'm just going to wrap it up now. And Mike, you want to start? Anything we didn't talk about, or any final, really inspirational things to leave with this fine group of people here before we go?
I think there's really inspirational. It's been a long time since I've been inspirational. But, I think there's tons of opportunity. I just can't figure out quite where it is yet. You know, it's certainly the tools you're seeing now. I think what we're seeing is it's coming out of the specialist hands. Like certainly in our domain where you're talking geographical information systems and very complex, very convoluted software, where it's focused in on a narrow need. So it's very much easier for the user to use. And hey, go out and play. If you're at all interested in the data, there is tons of data available for you to scrape from various different sources.
Anything about geomatics? We'll talk to Mike.
Yeah, please.
Chris, any final words?
Yeah, my big thing is just get going. I think organizations should be looking at themselves and saying, we don't really have time to sit and wait, pontificate, and plan this out. What should we do? Just get going. Just start finding some things. You're gonna make some mistakes. This is a lot of the stuff they're talking about around digital transformation. Really, I like that terminology. Was just get out there, do some stuff, make some mistakes, fail, learn, iterate, get going on things, learn, fail, ask better questions, and just get moving. Too many organizations are just sitting on their hands trying to wait for perfection. That's not going to happen. Just get going.
And you have turns out some educational training courses that they can even start at too,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
go to your website.
Yeah,
you'll be
our
able to
website,
go-
iterationinsights.com/events, and we've got our whole training event calendar.
And Mission Geospatial, right?
Yeah.
There we go. Perfect. Roger, any final words?
You know, we used to think of systems as more permanent things, require a lot of work. I think we can do a lot more smaller stuff and move faster and see if that's good enough. We did some work for an agricultural company that was hiring 25 people a week and didn't have a permanent system in place yet. I said, what could you do for us? And he said, well, some combination of spreadsheets and Power BI reports might work for you. For 1 year they used that and they hired 900 people. And then they finally got their large-scale system in place, Workday. And our stuff's gone. But it served its purpose. We got paid. It was a good relationship. Why not, right? We recently, I'd started out by saying we recently have been asked to do some tracking of COVID-19, which is the virus, an unfolding story. It's a human tragedy. It's evolving into an economic one as well. And how long do you go with that? How long do you plan for that? Nobody really knows. But you provide reasonable information for the time. And if they want to evolve it, hopefully this is short-lived. And then it's gone. You don't need those reports anymore. So that's kind of the world we live in, and you want to kind of get your skills, if you're looking at skill development, in such a way that you're kind of agile. And by the way, some of your first jobs and what you were educated at, if you did some formal education, does not define you. You are so much more than that. And sometimes those specialties, while we need to learn the hard way of doing stuff, they narrow our view of the world, and that is not quite the world anymore. So think of yourself more broadly and be prepared to try different things. There's opportunity.
There's the inspiration.
Oh, that was
into this, so.
inspirational.
Thank you guys. So thank you guys. Thank you everyone for came out today. If you want to know anything more about Resource YYC, resourceyyc.org. If you want to get a free pass, go see Marlene, and we're happy to have you come sit in the space for a day. And if you do want a tour, we'd happy to give you a tour as well, now or anytime. So thanks again, everybody. Thank you. Have another drink, mingle a bit. We'll try wrap her up just after 6. And thanks again for coming. So, thank you.